Now, there is a question that acts as if it's like the brakes on a car being slammed on. It's a question that no matter how fast you're going, no matter how quickly you're moving, no matter how excited you are, this question, and it's only a tiny one-word question, can seem to stop all momentum. Now, this question is not completely useless because it has its place. And in its place, it's an okay question. But it's one of those questions that we tend to overuse. And by overusing the question, what happens is that all our progress becomes stopped. All our motivation can just freeze. We can get ourselves into a completely static place by this question. It can stop any embryonic ambition that you might have if you then ask this question in the wrong place. And typically, asking this question in the wrong place means asking it too soon. So, for the most part, I would say that this question is best avoided. Now, it does have its place somewhere way down the line. But like I say, we tend to overuse it too early. And it gets us from that place where we're bubbling, where we're excited about things, to being stuck. And of course, sometimes we're not bubbling and excited. Sometimes we're in a bit of a hole, aren't we? And we're trying to get ourselves to a better place where things don't feel quite as dark and numb as they do at the moment. And in that case, it's even more of a difficult one. So you're probably curious about what the question is. Like I say, it's one word, it's a tiny little thing, but its impact is really big. The question is, how? And it's always used in terms of, well, how are you going to do that? So you might go to someone and say, do you know, I was thinking of starting up such and such a business. And they'll say, well, how are you going to do that? And you'll think, oh, yeah, I don't know really. And suddenly the motivation dies and the idea dies with it. All because we ask how too early. And I notice that when I'm working with people as a therapist, the question how hardly ever passes my lips. And that might seem a strange thing, because you might think that if somebody wants to get somewhere different to here, then the question of how might be a useful one, but I notice that it isn't. I notice that what the question how does is it stops people in their tracks. It acts, like I say, like the brakes on a car being slammed on. And so, instead of asking yourself the question how, I'm going to give you a couple of other ways of moving forward with your ideas instead. Whether your idea is some kind of ambition or whether your idea is simply to feel a little bit better than you feel at the moment, to engage with the world a little bit more than you're doing at the moment, whatever your goal is. I'm going to give you better ways of moving forward with that than asking that question, how? So the first thing that I would invite you to focus on is simply to paint the picture. So when you have some sort of idea in mind of something that you'd like to do, or I don't know, maybe at the moment you're feeling a bit down in the dumps or you're feeling a bit stuck and you're wanting something different, my question would be more likely to be something like, well, supposing that you get that thing, what are the things that would tell you that it had happened? As you kind of look around this new world that you've created, what are the things, the little milestones that you would notice was there? And what that does is it gets you to actually paint the picture. if you were feeling a little bit better, what would tell you that you were feeling a little bit better? What would you notice about what's going on in the world, what's going on in you? What would other people notice, in fact, about what they're seeing in you? And paint the picture, visualize it, put yourself there. In that moment whereby, I don't know, maybe it happens overnight and so you wake up tomorrow and this thing that you want has already happened. What would tell you that it had already happened? What clues would you be picking up to say, I've actually got the thing I wanted. Things are a little bit better. Or whatever your idea might happen to be. And you see, what that does is it continues your forward momentum. Or maybe it even starts the ignition in the car in the first place. Maybe you're focused on the things that feel wrong at the moment, or what you're doing wrong. And maybe you're mired in a moment of self-criticism and you feel stuck in that. Well, this is a different way forward, isn't it? Because this just asks the question, what is it you want? And what will tell you that you're already there? And so straight away you get this forward momentum and you start to visualize into this place that actually feels soothing and exciting and motivating. It's certainly a better question than how. Because the how would come before you've even got any picture in your head of what it would be like to arrive there. And so all you're stuck with then is, well, I don't know how to get there. And so you can see how it's not a helpful question. It's better instead to really visualize. So that's the first step. But once you've visualized, you might be thinking to yourself, but Al, surely I need to find out how now. Once I've visualized it, surely the question is useful at this point. But again, I'd say not just yet. What I'd invite you to do instead is, as you start noticing the specific things that would be different in your life should you get the thing that you want, what I would invite you to do is to notice where those things are already showing up, or where those things have shown up in the past. So rather than asking how, which might again still slam the brakes on and still put you into some sort of mind freeze, think instead about where this is already showing up. Think instead of a time where this thing that you want has already been in existence. So I remember a time, for instance, where I wanted to start jogging with some regularity. And I thought, well, come on, Al, tell me about a time where you've jogged with regularity before. And I thought back to this time where I'd given myself a target. I'd actually entered a race, a 5K race. I announced it to my friends and I started fundraising. I got sponsored for a charity. And then I was in then because I had the target and also had the public accountability, and I didn't want to let the charity down. And so I remembered that, and guess what? I hadn't asked myself how, but I was jogging every day, moving forward to this goal. I did all those things. I found my how in a more organic way. So they're the two steps that I would invite you to do. Rather than asking the question, how? Paint the picture. Suppose that you get what you want, whether it's just a little bit better or it's some big ambition. What will tell you that you're there? What are the specific things that you notice in life? And secondly, notice where that's already showing up to an extent. And once it's shown up, and notice too where you've brought that into life in the past. Because once you've noticed that, once you're able to kind of say, oh yeah, well, that is kind of happening to some extent. Or where, like me, you go, oh yeah, I did actually used to jog on a regular basis. Then you're in a position to ask yourself the how. How did I manage to do that? But you're asking how from a place of strength than from a place of weakness. Because when you ask how at the beginning, we still don't know. The mind is too empty. It's hard to really reach out and grab hold of anything. But when you ask how at the end of that, you've already painted the picture. You've already noticed when you've done it before. You already notice when you're doing it to some extent in the present. And then asking how becomes useful. And so if this episode has been helpful to you, please share it. That really, really helps. It helps me, it helps the show, and it also helps the person that you're sharing it to. If you'd like to work with me one-to-one, I'm Alun Parry. You can find me at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. And please subscribe to the podcast as well. There's one out daily. And if you never want to miss an episode again, you can just subscribe completely free wherever you get your podcast. So thanks for listening, and I'll be back again tomorrow with another one. You're listening to A Slice of Therapy with me, Alun Parry.